All right, let's dive into an idea that might just shake up how you think about success. I mean, what if your greatest talents aren't really yours? What if, in a way, they belong to all of us?
Think about it. When you accomplish something great, how much of that is really, truly just you? We always talk about hard work and dedication, and of course that matters. But what about the raw materials you were just born with?
So here it is, the core argument we're going to unpack today. The idea that high intelligence isn't some personal trophy you build from scratch. Instead, it's something that just sort of emerges from a shared genetic pool they're calling the commons. It's a pretty wild thought, so let's break down what that actually means. Okay, so where does this whole argument even start? Well, it all kicks off with a simple but really profound scientific fact about how traits like intelligence get passed down.
You see, intelligence is what's called a polygenic trait. That's just a fancy way of saying it's not like eye color, where just a few genes call the shots. Nope, it's way more complicated. We're talking about thousands of different genes all working together in this incredibly complex dance. There's no single smart gene you can point to.
So, imagine the entire human gene pool as a giant cosmic lottery. A person with a high IQ genotype didn't earn it, they didn't work for it, they just happened to get a super rare winning ticket drawn completely at random from that massive pool.
And this is where it gets really interesting, because the entire lottery pool matters. Without that huge genetic diversity, which, by the way, keeps the whole population healthy, those rare and complex combinations needed for something like high intelligence couldn't even happen. So the lucky few who get that winning ticket, they are 100% dependent on the genetic contributions of everyone else.
So, if high intelligence is just a lucky draw from a lottery that we all contribute to, what does that actually mean for us? This is where the whole argument takes a big turn. It pivots from a scientific fact to a question of ethics, from a biological reality to a social obligation. The author lays it out in this really clear three-step argument. Step one is the genetic premise. High intelligence needs a healthy, diverse gene pool. Step two is the conclusion from that. We are all biologically dependent on each other. And then step three is the big ethical leap. This mutual dependency creates what's called a genetic debt to the rest of society.
And that brings us to the main event, this idea of the genetic commons. It's asking us to stop thinking about our genes as private property. Instead, we should see the entire human gene pool as a shared resource, like a national park or clean air, something we all put into and we all benefit from. And if you buy that premise, well, the implication is huge. If your unique genetic gifts, your winning lottery ticket, came from this shared pool, then you owe something back. You have a duty to the very community that created and maintains that pool in the first place.
And this, right here, is where the argument gets really provocative. It's a direct shot at our modern belief in meritocracy. The whole idea that success is something you earn, and therefore something you morally deserve. The argument borrows from this philosophical idea called constitutive luck. Basically, your innate talents are a core part of who you are, but you did absolutely nothing to get them. Now, of course, this doesn't mean effort is meaningless. You still have to work incredibly hard to develop a talent. But the point here is about the raw potential itself, the starting line in the race that you didn't choose. And if you didn't earn that starting line, can you really take all the moral credit for winning? So let's put these two worldviews right next to each other so you can see the contrast. On one side, you have the familiar meritocratic view. Your talent is your property, and it justifies getting bigger rewards. On the other side, you have the genetic commons view. Your talent is a lucky draw from a shared pool, and it actually creates a social obligation. It's a total shift from the myth of the self-made person to the reality of a deeply interdependent society. And this all boils down to a really tough political question. It's an idea that thinkers like John Rawls have wrestled with for a long time. If the natural lottery of birth is fundamentally based on luck, can it ever be a just or fair reason for all the social and economic inequality we see in the world? How do we justify the outcomes if it's all just a roll of the dice?
So, if we're supposed to rethink meritocracy, what's the alternative? What does that world even look like? Well, the final part of this idea proposes a complete paradigm shift in how we think about society and success.
The shift they're talking about is profound. The focus would move away from just rewarding individual achievement and toward fostering a sense of collective responsibility. It's less about celebrating genetic luck and more about making sure the entire commons can flourish. In practice, that might mean investing more in things like public education and healthcare, recognizing that those things enrich the very soil that new talents are going to grow from.
And this all leads to this really beautiful and kind of powerful final metaphor. The most talented among us aren't some heroes standing alone. They are, and I quote, a beautiful and fragile flower that can only bloom in the rich soil of our collective genetic garden. They're completely dependent on the health of the whole.
Which leaves us with this one last big question to think about. It reframes our personal gifts not as private possessions to be hoarded, but as collective responsibilities to be shared. If our talents really do come from this shared commons, what do we owe back to the garden?